welcome everybody. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on today, the Jagera and Turrbal, and to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and also to acknowledge their continued connection to this land. As I said, Knowledge Connect is an initiative of the Centre for Social Impact. I have the title, or have adopted the title at the Centre for Social Impact in my one-day-a-week appointment there of the Social Design Fellow. And in that role, I've been exploring what the connection is between design and social innovation. And this is, I guess, one of my first projects to collect together the cutting-edge thinking around what's happening around the world around social design and social innovation. So I guess the starting point for looking at design and social innovation is the whole idea that we're currently experiencing, and probably have been for a while, this idea of wicked problems that are not, they're more complex than complex social problems, if you like. In that they're multifocal, they're multidimensional. It's really hard to get a grip on where to start trying to solve some of these issues. It's hard to get a grip about who could actually solve some of these issues. And they require an interdisciplinary engagement. And the other difficult thing, I think, about wicked issues is that what works in one place won't necessarily translate to work in every place. And what can work in a particular community may not work at scale across the whole of society. Some of you might think that things like procurement, which is up there, adding value to supply chains and procurement decision making, isn't a particularly fascinating social design question, but I have to say that I am fascinated by those sort of quite technical issues, because we can get the technical part right and all the processes and the analytical part right. But what I think design adds to the equation is a methodology for how to actually put it into practice. So even if we get all the laws right, all the regulations right about something like procurement, it won't necessarily change the behaviour of people on the ground when they're searching for social value to add to their procurement contracts. So I think that's, for me, why I've been attracted to the whole area of design, because it really bridges creativity and innovation. So it creates the practical pathways. So in putting together this Knowledge Connect series, I've looked at 10 articles from around the world. I tried to take a very eclectic approach. This is an area that is burgeoning with ideas and innovations, and people are writing a lot around the potential of design to add something new to the area of social innovation. And in the articles, what I've done is to explore how design can play a role in not just catalysing social innovation, but actually harnessing it and spreading it and scaling it. And in the articles that I've chosen to review, I've tried to make some of them quite critical. At times I feel like I've probably been a little bit too critical, so I want to put a caveat on my critique in the Knowledge Connect to say that I'm actually very excited about the potential for design to add something to social innovation. I've tried to take a macro perspective, the big picture of what it looks like around the world, and then dig into some case studies, a microscopic perspective. So I want to jump straight into the middle. I'm not going to cover each of the discussions in depth, each of the articles in depth. I want to take you right into the middle of the Knowledge Connect review and talk about an article that was written by Liz Sanders and a colleague of hers. She runs an organisation in the States called Make Tools. And she has suggested that we're in a position at the moment where we're moving away from traditional design practice, which we all recognise in architecture, graphic design, interior design, product design and technology design. And she suggests that we're actually moving into a phase where we're looking much more at emerging design practices, which again are quite diverse. So experience design, service design, transformation design, it gets very grand, and social design. I agree with her to a certain extent that we're moving much more from a material focus of design and a focus on product design into the human face of how do people actually engage with these material products that we create. But I also think it needs to be acknowledged that the traditional design practices are also starting to think about how they could apply their skills to solve social issues and create social innovation. Product designers, you all recognise Philippe Starck's juicer. The whole area of product design is also starting to think about its application for social innovation. So the top picture is a picture of Life Straw, which is a product that's been designed as a personal filtration system that creates potable water and that people can use to drink what looks like fairly severe water. The area of graphic design, which is probably the design discipline that I've been most closely involved in and interested in, is also moving into a space where we're looking much more at how to present social messages, not just present products and try and get messages out about brands, but looking at social issues as brands, if you like, and how we can engage citizens in that sort of communication process. So going back to Liz Sanders' engagement with emerging design practice and looking much more at that emerging design practice as it's applied, what she's suggesting is that those emerging design practices are centering on human behaviour, on how we address issues of culture, on how we create new relationships, I guess, to engage with issues of social innovation. And you'll see that in the review, I have focused a lot on service design. And a lot of the articles, so for example, I looked at, this is service design thinking. I actually got a user-centered design consultant to review that for me. And she's focused on how service design, which is about designing services that are appropriate to the needs that they're supposed to be meeting, and how that can be applied to the social innovation sphere. So I'd really recommend you having a look at Jacqueline Wexler's review of that book. It's probably, in terms of the hand image, it's the most practical of the books. There's lots and lots of methodologies in that book that are really, really interesting to explore. Looking at the oldest piece that I've included in the review. This is a piece we were just saying before. It's not that old. It's written in 2006, but it feels like that's a long time ago. This was a very early piece written by Hilary Cottam and her colleagues at the Design Council in the UK. And they talked about this grand idea of transformation design. So how can we use design methodologies and design principles to actually transform whole systems? And she suggests that a user-centered approach is the way to go. And these are the sorts of skills that she's suggesting that we need to think about if we're going to engage in a user-centered approach. The first one is looking at things from the perspective of the user. So, for example, if we're talking about social services, looking at and following what the client or the consumer of those services is experiencing. So if we were to do this, say, in a Centrelink office, we would follow that particular consumer through their journey of the Centrelink office and what they experienced and all the people that they engaged with that designers call touch points, service designers call touch points, all the points where they touch the service and their experience of that. She also suggests that a skill of service design and user-centred approaches is around making things visible. So things that are invisible to us, they create artefacts or ways to create that visually. So there's a lot of visualisation in design for social innovation. There's a lot of creation of models and actually walking through those models to see how they could create a different kind of service. And then the last area that she thinks is very important for user-centred design is prototyping, which, you know, all of these things are not particularly new in the social sector. You know, we can make connections. Anybody who's studied or been involved with community development will know all of these things in a different terminology. I think prototyping, though, is slightly different to what, say, we would call piloting. Because in Australia we have lots of pilot social programs, but they differ from prototyping in that there's not the feedback loops that I would expect if I was seeing a design prototype. There's not the feedback loops to encourage learning, and there are not multiple things happening at once. So when we attempt to do social program pilots, you know, we often set them up as, you know, we do the strategic plan, we put the plan into action, and then if we're lucky, we'll reflect on that post the pilot. Prototyping is doing all of those things simultaneously. So you'd want to be doing much more simultaneous testing with your user groups, and also acknowledging that some of the things that you'll test will fail, and having the flexibility within the prototyping process to actually try something different when you do get failure. To see a really good example of that in the Australian context, I'd recommend the work that the Australian Centre for Social Innovation in Adelaide is doing around looking at family crisis. And they've been very generous in writing up their prototyping work and actually acknowledging that, you know, they had 4 or 5 prototypes that were rejected by their users. And that's a really important part of the learning dimension of this sort of work. So that's Hilary Cotton and the Design Council. This sort of work is happening everywhere, and you won't be able to read this on there, but the last page of the handout is actually this map. And it links people to all the really exciting things that I discovered. This is not the be-all and end-all of design and social innovation, but these are the exciting projects that I came across as I was writing these reviews. Social design and design for social innovation has particularly been strong in the UK, in Northern Europe, in places like Sweden and Denmark and Finland, and also in the United States. Although I would say that in the United States, there has been much more of a focus on the applicability of this to developing country contexts rather than looking at how the design could be applied in their own contexts. In the review, I've tried to look at a range of examples and case studies from a variety of these and pointed to literature that you might like to follow up around different examples of this. I'm particularly interested in the work that the TAXI, the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, is doing, and also organisations like Snook in Scotland, who are doing some very interesting work around local community design and melding community development and social innovation design, and MindLab in Denmark, who are taking it up into a public policy realm, is also very interesting. Just to jump to another of the articles that I reviewed that again is done by someone from the UK, Daniela Sangiori, and she's suggesting that there are 2 really interesting things in relation to design and social innovation. The first one is the citizen-led design movement, and the whole idea of collaborative service models. So in Australia, we're seeing increasingly citizens just taking action without professional involvement. So, you know, people designing co-housing establishments, they're taking on the design work, designing their own organisations, designing the community-led recoveries. All of those sort of things fall under collaborative service models. She also points out the models of co-creation and co-production. In the UK, and a lot of the articles talk about co-design, co-production, co-creation, all of those things, which are really professionals working alongside clients, consumers, to create and design new ways of engaging with their worlds. And that's a lot of the work that I've been trying to do around social design is focused on that area. Just quickly, 2 more slides. Looking at a Swedish example. This is the Media Living Lab in Sweden. The article that I reviewed there focused on how to do prototyping, so the practice of prototyping. And it's a very interesting article because they actually provide a case study and then reflect on that case study. So the case study is about their work with a group of refugee women trying to adapt to the situation of living in Sweden. And again, they go through a whole lot of iterations of engaging with those women to create the sort of service that they feel is going to actually help them. A very interesting and thought-provoking piece of writing. And I'll finish off with probably my favourite one. It's my favourite piece in the review, written by Thomas Darwin from the States. It's my favourite. It's also my most frustrating article because it's only about 4 pages long, and in it is just a wealth of information and creativity about what you could do with design and social innovation. What he's suggesting is that we need to get away from thinking about designers and citizens and designers working for citizens, that it's actually much more about either co-designing, which is the middle rung, or it's about actually democratising design. So teaching design as a community resilience tool in communities so that people can use those methodologies to create their own solutions. And to me, that is the most exciting part of design and social innovation. The way that we can actually put these tools and methodologies and approaches to use, not ignoring all of the history of social innovation, not ignoring all the methodologies like community development that will actually help us to do the how of this work, but to actually make it a democratic process. So I'm going to stop talking and open up the floor, because I know that there are people in the room who are doing all sorts of really exciting things in relation to design and social innovation, and it would be great to hear about the work that we're doing.